Shane Shields skillfully navigated his sedan through the tranquil suburban streets, a sense of fulfillment from a productive conference still pulsing through his veins. As a devoted high school history teacher, he cherished these opportunities to refine his teaching skills. The digital clock on his dashboard showed 4:30 p.m. He was home earlier than expected, a rare treat that often meant surprising his kids with spontaneous ice cream outings. Shane pulled into the driveway of his modest two-story house, shared with his wife Natalie and their 2 children. He smiled when he noticed the curtains in the living room window fluttering. He imagined his kids peeking out, eager for his return. He grabbed his briefcase from the passenger seat, filled with notes and new teaching materials he couldn't wait to implement. Approaching the front door, keys in hand, Shane paused. He could hear his wife's voice drifting through the partially open living room window. Her hushed tone made him furrow his brow. "Listen, Cynthia," Natalie said, oblivious to Shane's presence. "Once he's done paying for the kid's private school, I'm filing for divorce. Then I'll accuse him of domestic crime and live with Ryan and the kids off his money." Shane's hand froze on the doorknob. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as his brain processed the unexpected turn of events. His jaw clenched, and a muscle twitched beneath the skin. For a moment, he felt a surge of raw anger, urging him to burst through the door and confront her. But Shane was not a man of impulsive actions. He took a deep breath, forcing his racing heart to slow. His mind, usually occupied with lesson plans and historical dates, now churned with a different kind of strategy. Without making a sound, he made his way back to his car, got in, started the engine, and drove away, heading towards the nearby Oakwood Park. The park was quiet at this hour, with only a few joggers and dog walkers dotting the landscape. Shane found an empty bench overlooking the duck pond and sat down. He stared at the placid water, his reflection fractured by the gentle ripples. His hands, usually so steady, trembled slightly as he pulled out his phone. He hesitated for a moment, then opened his contact list. His thumb hovered over Natalie's name before scrolling past it. Instead, he tapped on Amelia Hawthorne, attorney at Ella W. As the phone rang, Shane's mind whirled with plans. He would need evidence. He would need to protect his assets. Most importantly, he needed to ensure his children's future. Amelia Hawthorne's office, a crisp voice answered. "This is Shane Shields," he said, his voice low and controlled. "I need to schedule an urgent appointment with Amelia. It's regarding a divorce." There was a brief pause on the other end. "I see, Mr. Shields. Ms. Hawthorne has an opening tomorrow at 7 a.m. Would that work for you?" Shane nodded, then remembered he was on the phone. "Yes, that's perfect. Thank you." As he ended the call, Shane noticed a young couple walking hand in hand along the pond's edge. They looked happy and carefree. He wondered if he and Natalie had ever truly been like that, or if it had all been an illusion. Shane stood up, straightening his shoulders. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold, hard determination. As he walked back to his car, Shane began to formulate his plan. He would not be a victim. He would not let Natalie destroy everything he had worked for. By the time he pulled back into his driveway, the sun was setting. He took a moment to compose himself before entering the house. The sound of cartoons greeted him as he opened the door. "Daddy," his 6-year-old daughter, Emily, came running, pigtails bouncing. He scooped her up, inhaling the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Hey, princess," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "How was your day?" As Emily launched into a detailed account of her kindergarten adventures, Shane's eyes met Natalie's across the room. She smiled, the picture of a loving wife. "Welcome home, honey," she said, coming over to give him a peck on the cheek. "Dinner will be ready in about an hour." Shane nodded, forcing a smile. "Sounds great. I'm just going to freshen up." As he climbed the stairs to their bedroom, Shane's mind was already racing ahead. He had a long night of planning ahead of him, but for now, he had to play the role of the unsuspecting husband. The game had begun, and Shane was determined to win. Over the next few weeks, Shane maintained a facade of normalcy that would have made any actor proud. He smiled at breakfast, asked about Natalie's day, and continued his routine of bedtime stories with the kids. But beneath this veneer of domestic tranquility, Shane was a man on a mission. One late night, after Natalie had gone to bed, Shane carefully installed hidden cameras in strategic locations around the house. His hands were steady now, his movements precise. He positioned one in the living room, angled to capture the couch and the front door, another one in the kitchen, and a third in the home office. As he worked, Shane's mind drifted back to his first meeting with Amelia Hawthorne. The ruthless divorce attorney had listened intently as Shane laid out what he knew. Smart move, not confronting her immediately. Amelia had nodded approvingly. "We'll need irrefutable evidence. Keep recording conversations, document everything." And Shane, she leaned forward, her eyes alight with determination. "Don't let her suspect anything. The element of surprise will be crucial." Shane nodded, his expression determined. "I understand. I've already started gathering financial records. I'll get you everything you need." As he carefully concealed the last camera, Shane felt a surge of satisfaction. He was no longer the naive, trusting husband Natalie thought she could manipulate. The next morning, over breakfast, Natalie chatted animatedly about her plans for the day. "I've got a big meeting with a potential client," she said, buttering her toast. "It might run late, so don't wait up for me." Shane nodded, sipping his coffee. "Good luck with the meeting. I hope it goes well." As Natalie left, kissing him goodbye with practiced affection, Shane wondered how many of her late meetings had actually been rendezvous with Ryan. That afternoon, while Shane was ostensibly at work, he sat in his car a block away from their house. He watched as a sleek sports car pulled into their driveway. Ryan Blackwood, looking every inch the smooth-talking real estate agent in his designer suit, stepped out and sauntered to the front door. Shane's hands gripped the steering wheel as he watched Natalie open the door and invite Ryan in with a playful giggle. He took a deep breath, reminding himself that every moment of their betrayal was being recorded. Inside the house, unaware of the hidden cameras capturing their every move, Natalie and Ryan settled into the living room couch. Ryan poured 2 glasses of wine, Shane's wine, a gift from a grateful parent. "Soon, we'll have it all," Ryan said, taking a sip of the stolen wine. "Shane won't know what hit him." Natalie laughed, her sound cold. "He's too naive to suspect anything. It's almost too easy." Ryan pulled her close, his hand tracing up her thigh. And once we've bled him dry, we'll start our new life together. No more sneaking around. No more pretending. Just think, Nat, we'll have a life of adventure and excitement. Natalie's eyes sparkled with anticipation. I can't wait. Sometimes I can barely stand to look at him, with his earnest talks about his students and his precious history lessons. Well, soon you won't have to, Ryan assured her. We'll take him for everything he's worth, and then some. Later that night, as Shane reviewed the footage, his knuckles turned white as he gripped the edge of his desk, but his voice remained steady when he called Amelia. I've got more evidence. You're going to want to see this. The next day, Shane met Amelia at her office, handing over a USB drive containing the damning footage. Excellent work, Shane, Amelia said, her tone businesslike. This, along with the financial records you've given us, is going to be our best shot yet. But we're not quite there yet. Keep gathering evidence. The more we have, the stronger our position when we make our move. Shane nodded, his face alight with determination. I'll be sure to keep you in the loop. As he left Amelia's office, Shane felt a rush of emotions. He felt a surge of anger at Natalie's betrayal, a mix of disgust at her and Ryan's callousness, and a surge of satisfaction at being free from their game. He was taking control, and he was going to show them just how wrong they had been in underestimating him. As Shane built his case against Natalie, an unexpected challenge arose at work. The school board called an emergency meeting to discuss budget cuts. The history department, deemed non-essential by some board members, was on the chopping block. Shane sat in the staff room, surrounded by his worried colleagues. The atmosphere was tense, filled with whispered conversations and nervous glances. They can't just cut the entire department, Sarah, the American history teacher, said, her voice trembling. What about our students? Mark, who taught world history, shook his head glumly. You know how it is. When budgets get tight, history is always the first to go, but we'll fight to keep math and science. We might even get a single social studies class. Shane listened to their concerns, his mind already formulating a plan. He stood up, drawing everyone's attention. We're not going down without a fight, he said, his voice firm. We need to show the board, the parents, everyone, why history education is crucial. Who's with me? The room went quiet for a moment, and then Sarah spoke up, her voice full of anticipation. What do you have in mind, Shane? Shane smiled, his eyes alight with passion. We're going to organize, rally the parents, prepare a presentation for the board, show them exactly what they'd be losing if they cut our department. Over the next few days, Shane threw himself into the campaign to save the history department. He rallied his colleagues, enlisted the support of parents, and crafted a captivating presentation for the upcoming board meeting. His nights, once filled with quiet despair over his crumbling marriage, now buzzed with a newfound purpose. One evening, as Shane pored over budget reports and drafted talking points, Natalie sauntered into his home office. She perched on the edge of his desk, her pose deliberately provocative. "Why are you spending so much time on this?" she asked, her tone a mixture of irritation and feigned concern. "It's not like your job matters that much." Shane bit back the cutting retort that sprang to his lips. Instead, he met her gaze calmly. Every job matters, Natalie. Every person matters. Natalie rolled her eyes, oblivious to the irony of his words. Whatever. Just don't forget we have dinner with the Andersons on Friday. Try to be on time for once. As she left, swaying her hips in a way that once would have captivated him, Shane turned back to his work. The dinner with the Andersons, Ryan's business partners, would go ahead as planned. It was all part of maintaining the illusion of normalcy. Friday evening arrived, and with it, the Andersons. Shane played the role of gracious host perfectly, pouring wine and engaging in pleasant small talk. His smile never wavered, even when Ryan Blackwood made a surprise appearance halfway through the meal. "Hope you don't mind me crashing the party," Ryan said with a playful grin. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by." Shane noticed the quick, heated glance between Ryan and Natalie. He raised his glass in a toast, his voice steady. "The more, the merrier, right? Welcome, Ryan." As the evening wore on, Shane observed the subtle touches, the lingering looks between his wife and her lover. He cataloged each one, adding them to the mountain of evidence he was accumulating. "So, Shane," Mr. Anderson said, swirling his wine glass, "Natalie tells us you're having some trouble at work. Budget cuts, was it?" Shane nodded, his expression carefully neutral. "Yes, the school board is considering some reductions, but we're working on a plan to show them the value of maintaining a strong history department." Ryan chuckled, the sound grating on Shane's nerves. "Seems like a lot of effort for a subject most kids sleep through. No offense, Shane." "None taken," Shane replied smoothly. "History might not be everyone's favorite subject, but understanding our past is crucial for shaping our future. It's about so much more than just memorizing dates and names." Natalie interjected, her tone dismissive. "Let's not bore everyone with shop talk, dear. Who wants dessert?" As Natalie bustled off to the kitchen, Shane caught Ryan's appraising look. For a moment, he wondered if Ryan saw him as a rival or merely an obstacle to be removed. Either way, Shane knew he was more than ready for the challenge. Later that night, after their guests had left and Natalie had gone to bed, Shane sat alone in his study. He pulled out a small notebook and jotted down his observations from the evening. Then he opened his laptop and began composing an email to Amelia. "Another productive week," he wrote. "I think we're almost ready to make our move." He hit send, then leaned back in his chair, staring out the window at the star-studded sky. A storm was coming, but this time he would be the one controlling the lightning. As he closed his laptop, Shane's thoughts turned to the upcoming school board meeting. He had two battles to fight now, one at home and one at work, but he was determined to win both. He wouldn't let Natalie destroy his family, and he wouldn't let short-sighted bureaucrats destroy his passion for teaching. With a renewed sense of purpose, Shane delved into his notes, preparing for the upcoming board meeting presentation. He had always taught his students about the remarkable figures in history who had faced daunting challenges and emerged victorious. Now, it was his turn to embody that same resilience and strength. As the night progressed, Shane worked diligently, his mind clear and focused. He was no longer just fighting for his job or his marriage. He was ready to take on the world. He was fighting for his future, for his children, and for the principles he held dear, and he was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Shane Shields stood at the podium, his gaze sweeping across the packed auditorium. School board members, parents, and fellow teachers filled the seats, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. This was it, the moment that could make or break the history department. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. He felt a sense of irony, knowing he was fighting to preserve the past while his own future hung in the balance. But unlike his personal life, this was a battle he could wage in the open. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, concerned parents and colleagues, Shane began, his voice strong and clear. We're here today to discuss more than just budget cuts. We're here to decide the value we place on understanding our shared history. Shane's voice boomed as he began his meticulously crafted presentation, the board members leaning forward, intrigued. He presented compelling statistics, shared heartfelt testimonials from students, and painted a vivid picture of a future where historical ignorance might lead to repeated mistakes. By cutting the history department, Shane concluded, his passion evident in every word, we're not just eliminating classes. We're erasing our children's connection to their heritage, their understanding of how we got here, and their ability to shape where we're going. I urge you to reconsider this decision. Thank you. The room erupted in applause as Shane stepped away from the podium. He could see several board members nodding approvingly, while parents turned to each other, engaged in animated discussions. As the meeting adjourned, the school superintendent approached Shane, a smile on his face. "That was a fantastic speech, Mr. Shields," he said. "I'm sure you've given us all a lot to think about." Shane nodded, beaming. "Thank you, sir. I really hope it was enough." It wasn't until he was driving home that he fully grasped the incredible evening. He had achieved the impossible. Not only had he saved the history department, but he had also secured a well-deserved promotion to department head. A surge of triumph washed over him, momentarily pushing aside the turbulence of his personal life. As he pulled into his driveway, Shane noticed an unfamiliar car parked on the street. His eyes narrowed as he recognized the sleek sports car, Ryan Blackwood's car. Inside, he found Natalie and Ryan in the living room, heads close together, whispering and giggling. They sprang apart as Shane entered, and Natalie's face brightened with a smile. "Shane, you're home early," she said. "Ryan just stopped by to drop off some paperwork for a case we're working on." Shane raised an eyebrow, his voice calm. "Is that so? How convenient that he arrived just as I was due home." Ryan stood, smoothing down his designer suit. "Hey there, Shane. I hope you don't mind me dropping by unannounced. You know how it is in our line of work, always on the clock." Shane's jaw tightened, but he nodded warmly. "Not at all, Ryan. Always a pleasure." As Ryan made his excuses and left, Shane turned to Natalie. "I have some news. The board meeting went well. They're not only keeping the history department, but they've promoted me to department head." Natalie's eyes widened in genuine surprise. "Oh, well, that's unexpected. Congratulations, I suppose." Shane watched her carefully, noting the lack of enthusiasm in her voice. "Thanks. I thought we could celebrate. Maybe open that bottle of champagne we've been saving?" Natalie's smile faltered for a moment before she recovered. "Of course, darling. Let me just freshen up first. As she disappeared upstairs, Shane allowed himself a smile. He had seen the panic in her eyes, the quick glance towards her phone. No doubt she was already texting Ryan, rearranging whatever plans they had made for the evening. Shane moved to the kitchen, pulling out the champagne and 2 flutes. As he popped the cork, he couldn't help but wonder how many more of these false celebrations he would have to endure before he could finally reveal the truth. The next morning, Shane rose early, his mind already racing with the day's tasks. He had a meeting with Amelia scheduled for lunch, and he knew today would be crucial in setting their plans in motion. As he made coffee, Natalie shuffled into the kitchen, looking worse for wear. My head feels like it's about to explode. I'm pretty sure that champagne did a number on me last night. Shane, his voice full of concern, handed her a mug. Here, have this. You seemed a bit off last night, and I was worried you might be coming down with something. Natalie avoided his gaze, her voice barely above a whisper as she sipped the coffee. Thank you. Shane watched her, noting the faint smudge of lipstick at the corner of her mouth, a shade he knew she didn't own. I've got a busy day ahead, Shane said casually. Meetings all afternoon. Don't wait up for dinner. Natalie nodded, relief evident in her posture. That's fine. I've got a late meeting myself. I'll probably grab something with the team. As Shane left for work, he allowed himself a small, bitter smile. He knew exactly what kind of team meeting Natalie had planned. The day passed in a whirlwind of classes and administrative tasks. At lunch, Shane met Amelia at a discreet cafe across town. The ruthless attorney listened intently as Shane updated her on the latest developments. Excellent work, Shane. Amelia nodded approvingly. You've built an ironclad case. I think it's time we make our move. Are you ready? Shane's eyes hardened. More than readied. What's the next step? Amelia laid out their strategy, her voice low and precise. By the time lunch was over, Shane felt a sense of satisfaction. The net was closing in, and neither Natalie nor Ryan had any idea. That afternoon, Shane executed the first part of their plan. He transferred funds from their joint accounts to a secure account in his name, canceled all shared credit cards, and informed the children's school that only he was authorized to make decisions about their education. As he drove home that evening, Shane's phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. Cards declined. What's going on? He ignored it, knowing she would be home soon. Demanding answers, it was time for the confrontation he had been preparing for weeks. Shane was in his study when he heard the front door slam. Natalie's heels clicked angrily on the hardwood floor as she stormed towards him. What in the world is going on, Shane? She demanded, her face flushed with excitement. Why are our cards not working? Why can't I access our accounts? Shane looked up calmly, his expression unreadable. I think you know why, Natalie. Or should I ask Ryan? I'm sure he'd be happy to explain. Natalie's face drained of color. What are you talking about? Let's set the record straight, Shane said, his voice calm and measured. I know everything. The affair, your plans to divorce me, the false accusations you were planning to make. Did you really think I was that stupid? Natalie's shock quickly turned to fury. How dare you? She shrieked. You had no right to spy on me. No right? Shane stood, his anger finally showing. I had every right. You're my wife. Or have you forgotten that in between your little rendezvous with Ryan? He pulled out a folder, slapping it on the desk. Here's everything. The recordings, the photos, the financial records showing how you've been siphoning money to a secret account. It's all here, Natalie. Your little plan is over. Natalie's eyes darted from the folder to Shane's face, realization dawning. You've ruined everything, she hissed. No, Natalie. You did that all on your own, Shane replied, his voice steady. I've already spoken to a lawyer. You'll be hearing from her soon. I suggest you find yourself a good attorney. You're going to need one. As Natalie stormed out of the room, hurling threats and insults, Shane sank back into his chair. The confrontation he had been dreading for weeks was over, but he knew this was just the beginning of a long, exciting battle. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Shane moved into the guest room, avoiding Natalie as much as possible. She alternated between fits of rage and attempts at manipulation, but Shane remained unmoved. One evening, as Shane was helping the kids with their homework, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You think you've won? This isn't over. Shane deleted the message without responding. He had expected Ryan to get involved eventually. Let them plot and scheme. He was ready for whatever they threw at him. What he wasn't prepared for, however, was the lengths to which Natalie and Ryan would go to try and salvage their plan. It began with whispers at work, colleagues giving him odd looks, hushed conversations that stopped when he entered a room. Then came the meeting with the principal. Shane, I'm going to be blunt, Principal Harriet Dawson said, her expression grave. We've received some concerning information about you. There are allegations of financial impropriety. Shane's mind raced, and of course, Natalie and Ryan were trying to frame him for embezzlement. What kind of allegations? He asked, eager to understand the situation. Principal Dawson slid a file across her desk. These records suggest you've been misappropriating funds from the school's history department budget. Given your recent promotion, this is a very serious matter. Shane leafed through the documents, his anger growing with each page. The forgeries were good, he had to admit. If he hadn't been expecting something like this, he might have been caught off guard. These records are false, he said confidently, meeting the principal's gaze. I've got evidence that'll clear my name and show who's really behind this. Give me 24 hours, and I'll have it ready. Principal Dawson hesitated, then nodded. All right, Shane. You've always been an exemplary teacher. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, but if you can't disprove these allegations, I understand. Shane replied, standing. Thank you for the opportunity. As he left the office, Shane's mind was already working on his counter-move. He had been meticulous in documenting all school finances since taking over as department head. It was time to put that diligence to use. That night, as Natalie slept, Shane worked tirelessly, compiling financial records, cross-referencing budgets, and creating a comprehensive report that not only cleared his name but raised serious questions about who had access to the school's financial information. The next morning, Shane presented his findings to Principal Dawson and the school board. The evidence was irrefutable. Not only was Shane innocent, but the attempted frame-up pointed to someone with insider knowledge of the school systems, "This is quite something," one of the board members said, looking up from the report. "Mr. Shields, we owe you an apology. And it seems we have a serious security breach to investigate." As the meeting adjourned, Shane felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had overcome this hurdle, but he knew the war was far from over. Returning home that evening, Shane found Natalie pacing in the living room, her face a mask of barely contained rage. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" she exclaimed as soon as he walked in. "How dare you accuse me of trying to frame you?" Shane regarded her coolly. "I didn't accuse you of anything, Natalie, but it's interesting that you immediately assume I'm talking about you. Guilty conscience?" Natalie's face contorted with fury. "You'll pay for this, Shane. I'll destroy you." As she stormed out, Shane sank into a chair, exhausted. He pulled out his phone, dialing Amelia's number. "It's done," he said when she answered. "They tried to frame me for embezzlement, but I managed to clear my name. What's our next move?" Amelia's voice was grim but satisfied. "Good work, Shane. Now, it's time to strike back. We're filing for divorce and using every tool in our arsenal." As Shane ended the call, he gazed at the family photos adorning the mantel. So much had changed in such a short time. But as he looked at his children's smiling faces, he knew that every battle, every sleepless night, every moment of pain had been worth it. He would protect them, no matter the cost. The storm he had sensed brewing all those weeks ago had finally broken, and Shane Shields was no longer just weathering it. He was the one wielding the lightning, and he was ready to strike. The courthouse loomed before Shane, a monument of justice that would soon bear witness to the unraveling of his marriage. He straightened his tie, a gesture more of habit than vanity, and ascended the stone steps. Amelia Hawthorne, his formidable divorce attorney, walked beside him, her briefcase a treasure trove of evidence against Natalie. As they pushed through the grand oak doors, Shane caught sight of Natalie and her lawyer huddled in a whispered conference. Natalie's eyes, once warm with false affection, now sparkled with a mixture of fear and hatred. Shane met her gaze unflinchingly, his jaw set in determination. "Remember," Amelia murmured, "let me do the talking. You've done your part. Now it's time to let the evidence speak for itself." Shane nodded, taking his seat at the plaintiff's table. The judge, a stern-faced woman with salt and pepper hair, called the court to order. "In the matter of Shields versus Shields," she intoned, "we will now hear opening statements." Amelia rose, her posture radiating confidence. "Your Honor," she began, "what we have before us today is not merely a case of marital discord or irreconcilable differences. This is a case of premeditated betrayal, conspiracy, and attempted fraud on a grand scale." As Amelia laid out their case, Shane watched the judge's expression shift from professional neutrality to barely concealed disgust. As they presented their case, the exhibits revealed Natalie's secret accounts, transcripts of conversations plotting Shane's downfall, and photographs of his infidelity. Natalie's lawyer, a nervous young man, attempted to object at various points, but each objection was swiftly overruled. Shane could see the panic growing in Natalie's eyes as the mountain of evidence against her grew. When it came time for the defense to present their case, Natalie's lawyer made a valiant effort, though it was clear he knew they were fighting a losing battle. Then, in a move of desperate audacity, Natalie herself requested to address the court. The judge, eyebrow raised, allowed it. Natalie approached the stand, her face a mask of practiced vulnerability. "Your Honor," she began, her voice trembling with well-rehearsed emotion. "I know I've made mistakes, but I'm the victim here, Shane. He's not the man you see before you today. Behind closed doors, he's controlling, manipulative. He's abused me for years, emotionally and physically." A ripple of murmurs spread through the courtroom. Shane's hands clenched beneath the table, but his face remained impassive, having anticipated this move. "Objection, Your Honor," Amelia said, rising smoothly. "This is the first time any allegation of abuse has been raised, and we have evidence that directly contradicts Mrs. Shields' claims." The judge nodded. "Proceed, counselor." Amelia approached the bench, producing a USB drive. "Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit G. These are video recordings from the Shields home, installed by my client out of concern for his and his children's safety when he first became aware of Mrs. Shields' infidelity and plans to frame him." As the footage played on the courtroom's monitor, Natalie's face drained of color. The video showed not Shane, but Natalie herself engaging in emotionally abusive behavior, berating Shane, manipulating their children, even throwing objects in fits of rage. "As you can see, Your Honor," Amelia continued, her voice cold, "the only abuse in this household came from Mrs. Shields herself." The judge's expression hardened as she turned to Natalie. "Mrs. Shields, making false accusations of abuse is a serious offense. Do you wish to recant your statement?" Natalie, her composure crumbling, nodded mutely. The rest of the proceedings passed in a blur. When the judge finally delivered her ruling, her voice rang with unmistakable disgust for Natalie's actions. "In light of the overwhelming evidence presented, this court grants Mr. Shields' petition for divorce on grounds of adultery and mental cruelty. Additionally, Mr. Shields has been granted full custody of the children, with Mrs. Shields set to pay alimony and child support." As the gavel fell, Shane felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He turned to Amelia, gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you," he said simply. Amelia nodded, a rare smile crossing her features. "You did the hard part, Shane. I just presented the facts. Now, let's get you and your children home." As they left the courtroom, Shane caught sight of Natalie, slumped in her chair, her face buried in her hands. For a moment, he felt a twinge of not regret, but perhaps pity. Then he remembered the coldness in her eyes as she had plotted to destroy him, and the feeling passed. Shane stepped out into the sunlight, ready to begin the next chapter of his life. The weeks following the divorce were a whirlwind of change. Shane found himself in a new reality, one where he was both mother and father to his children, where whispers followed him in the grocery store, and where his phone buzzed constantly with messages of support and the occasional spirited text from Natalie. One sunny Saturday morning, as Shane was helping his daughter Emily with her science project, the doorbell rang. He opened it to find Cynthia, Natalie's sister, standing on his porch. Her face was drawn, eyes red-rimmed from what looked like days of crying. "Shane," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know where else to go. Can we talk? Shane hesitated for a moment, then nodded, stepping aside to let her in. They sat at the kitchen table, the half-finished science project a colorful barrier between them. "I'm so sorry," Cynthia blurted out, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I had no idea. Natalie told me you were the one. God, I feel so stupid." Shane pushed a box of tissues towards her. "You weren't the only one she fooled, Cynthia." Cynthia dabbed at her eyes. "When I heard that phone call, I thought she was confiding in me about your supposed abuse. I never imagined she was the one plotting and cheating. Shane, if I had known." "You would have told me?" Shane finished for her, his tone not unkind but skeptical. Cynthia's shoulders slumped. I don't know. I'd like to think I would have, but she's my sister." "Was my sister," she corrected herself. "After what she's done, I can't. I just can't." Shane nodded, empathetic to the pain of severing ties with someone you thought you knew. "What will you do now?" he asked. "I'm not sure," Cynthia admitted, "but I couldn't go on without apologizing to you, without you knowing that I never meant to be part of her scheme." As Cynthia left, Shane felt a strange mix of emotions. The apology didn't undo the pain of the past months, but it was a step towards healing, a reminder that not everyone in his life had been false. That evening, after putting the kids to bed, Shane sat in his study, staring at the blank document on his computer screen. The cursor blinked steadily, an electronic heartbeat waiting for words. Almost without conscious thought, Shane began to type. He poured his heart out, sharing the journey of discovering that the person you thought you knew best was a stranger, and the strength it took to stand up for oneself, to protect not just your assets, but your very sense of self. As the words flowed, Shane realized he was doing more than just venting. He was creating a roadmap, a guide for others who might find themselves in similar situations. By the time he finally looked up, the first rays of dawn were peeking through his window. The next day, Shane reached out to a few of his colleagues who had gone through divorces. They met for coffee, sharing stories and advice. As they talked, an idea began to form in Shane's mind. "What if," he said slowly, "we started a support group for men who've been through what we have? False accusations, gaslighting, the works." The others nodded enthusiastically, and within weeks, the group was a reality. They met in the community center, a growing circle of men finding strength in shared experiences and mutual support. It was after one of these meetings that Shane received an unexpected call. Natalie's name flashed on his phone screen, sending a jolt of adrenaline through him. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Shane." Natalie's voice was small, almost unrecognizable. I need to talk to you. Please." Shane's grip tightened on the phone. "I think we've said all we need to say to each other, Natalie. Please," she begged. "I've lost everything, my job, my friends. Even Cynthia won't talk to me. I know I made mistakes, but mistakes?" Shane interrupted, his voice firm. "Natalie, you didn't make mistakes. You made choices, deliberate, calculated choices to destroy me and take everything I cared about. And now you're facing the consequences of those choices." "But I've changed," Natalie pleaded. I've realized how wrong I was. If you could just give me another chance." "No," Shane said firmly. "You made your choice, Natalie. Now live with it." As he ended the call, Shane felt a sense of finality. The last tie to his old life had been severed, and he was ready to fully embrace the new. Months passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. Shane found himself thriving in his role as department head, his innovative teaching methods drawing attention from educators across the state. But it wasn't his role as a single father that he found the most fulfillment. One crisp autumn morning, Shane stood before his class, the familiar excitement of sharing knowledge buzzing through him. But today's lesson was different. Today, he wasn't just teaching history, he was teaching life. "Today," he began, his voice carrying clearly to the back of the classroom, "we're going to talk about resilience, about facing adversity and coming out stronger on the other side." The students leaned forward, intrigued. Many of them were familiar with pieces of Shane's story, and though it was hard to keep secrets in a close-knit community, they had never heard him speak of it directly. Shane's voice resonated with excitement as he continued. "Throughout history, we see examples of individuals and societies facing seemingly insurmountable odds. The American Revolution, where a group of colonists dared to challenge the might of the British Empire. The Civil Rights Movement, where brave men and women fought against racial discrimination, enduring violence and hatred to achieve equality. And the fall of the Berlin Wall, which symbolized the end of an era of division and the triumph of freedom." He paused, looking around the classroom, making eye contact with each student. But resilience isn't just for the history books. It's a quality we can all cultivate in our daily lives. It's about getting up after you've been knocked down, about not letting setbacks define you. As Shane spoke, weaving historical examples with personal anecdotes from his own experience, he could see the impact his words were having. Students who usually dozed through class were alert and engaged, and those who struggled with their own challenges sat up straighter, hope kindling in their eyes. "Take my own situation," he said, his voice steady. "I faced betrayal, false accusations, and the threat of losing everything I held dear. But instead of giving up, I fought back. I gathered evidence, I stood up for myself, and I refused to let the actions of others destroy me." Shane looked at his students with a mixture of warmth and determination. "Remember, adversity doesn't define you. How you respond to it does. You are all capable of incredible strength and resilience. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." As the bell rang and students filed out, many lingered to thank Shane, some even sharing their own stories of overcoming obstacles. One such student, a shy boy named Jake, approached Shane's desk. "Mr. Shields," he said quietly, his voice tinged with emotion, "I really needed to hear that today. I've been going through a tough time at home, and I was starting to lose hope." Shane smiled warmly at him. "I'm glad it helped, Jake. Just keep fighting, okay? You're stronger than you think." Later that afternoon, as Shane was about to leave, there was a knock at his classroom door. He looked up to see a woman in a smart business suit and a leather portfolio tucked under her arm. "Mr. Shields," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Sarah Blackwood from Pinnacle Publishing. I'd like to talk to you for a moment, if I may." Shane was intrigued and invited her in. Sarah took a seat, her posture radiating enthusiasm. "I'll get straight to the point, Mr. Shields," she said. "Word of your story has been spreading, and not just in this town. Your resilience, your fight for justice, your work with the support group. It's inspiring. We believe your experience could help so many people if it were shared more widely." Shane leaned back in his chair, surprised. "Are you suggesting?" Sarah nodded. "We'd like to offer you a book deal, Mr. Shields. Your story in your words. What do you say?" Shane was speechless for a moment, then nodded. "If it helps even one person avoid what I went through, it's worth sharing." As Sarah left, promising to send over a contract, Shane sat at his desk, amazed by this new turn of events. His phone buzzed with a text from the babysitter, reminding him it was time to pick up the kids. Shane gathered his things, a smile playing on his lips. Life had thrown him curveballs, but he had not only survived, he had thrived. As he walked to his car, he saw his children waiting, their faces lighting up at his approach. Emily waved excitedly while his son Michael held up a drawing he'd made in art class. Shane felt a surge of love and gratitude. Despite the challenges he'd faced, he'd emerged stronger, wiser, and still capable of love. He'd transformed pain into a force for good, helping others while building a better life for himself and his children. As they drove home, the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant hues, and Shane glanced in the rearview mirror at his children. They were chattering happily, untouched by the shadows of the past. Shane smiled, knowing that while the road had been hard, it had led them to this moment, driving into a future filled with hope and new possibilities. The betrayal that had once threatened to destroy him had instead become the catalyst for a richer, more authentic life. As they turned onto their street, Shane felt a deep sense of peace. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them with resilience, with courage, and with love. This is where our story comes to an end, and we would absolutely love to hear your thoughts in the comments section. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel, click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.